There was a quiet rhythm to Saturday afternoons in the 1980s. The hum of neon signs, the clatter of trays on formica tables, and the faint smell of frying oil that drifted through parking lots. These were markers of a weekend ritual. Kids pressed their faces against car windows, watching playgrounds of plastic and metal, while parents balanced paper bags heavy with burgers and fries. Fast food wasn't just convenience. It was a punctuation in family stories, a rare indulgence, a small reward for homework done or chores completed. Today, we walk back into that world, step by step, memory by memory. Drive-in windows were the first sign that a family outing had begun. Engines idled in orderly lines, radio dials turning softly between songs, the scent of hot asphalt mingling with the promise of fries. Paper menus fluttered on dashboard trays, edges worn from repeated folding. Orders were called across open air, exchanged through sliding windows, fingers brushing over small tokens of currency. Children's anticipation grew with every beep of a horn or squeak of a car door. The trays themselves had weight, pressed into laminated surfaces, punctuated by condensation from soft drinks. Each burger was wrapped in thin wax paper, the grease soaking through in familiar patterns. French fries were long, pale, and warm, spilling across paper sheets that crinkled under fingertips. Ketchup packets were torn open slowly, deliberate, each squirt a miniature ceremony. The background hum of fryers, punctuated by the occasional clang of a metal scoop, created a soundtrack. Some tables were sticky from meals past, others gleamed under fluorescent light. Families rotated seats, exchanged bites, passed napkins back and forth. The taste of salt and sugar lingered, the temperature of food remembered alongside laughter and small complaints. Even the layout of the restaurant, the counter, the booths, the playground just beyond the glass, shaped memory. These were the textures of everyday celebration, small milestones marked by warmth, smell, and the quiet satisfaction of being somewhere together. Children's play areas were both refuge and stage. Plastic slides glinted under late morning sun, metal bars warmed by fluorescent overheads in the indoor sections. The sound of sneakers against molded plastic echoed like a ritual. Parents watched from booths or low tables, sipping sodas, folding wrappers into neat piles, occasionally glancing at clocks to measure time passing. Birthday parties had their own choreography, paper hats, small cakes, and plastic forks. The swirl of frosting tasted like excitement itself. Fast food's simplicity mattered most here. The predictability of shape and flavor created a private world inside a public space. French fries were long and slender, burgers uniform, shakes thick, always the same. Even the way ketchup stained fingers became a shared shorthand, a story repeated across tables and neighborhoods. Some families lingered after finishing, reluctant to break the spell, enjoying the scent of frying oil and soda fizz lingering in the air. Car rides home were part of the ritual, the rustle of paper bags, sticky wrappers under seatbelts, windows half-rolled to balance warmth and breeze. Conversations were quiet, often interrupted by laughter or the hum of engines. These moments, though ordinary, were deeply coded with comfort and recognition. A simple burger, a fry, a small paper cup could contain entire afternoons, entire stories, entire seasons of childhood remembered decades later. Menu boards towered above counters, illuminated by bright lights that softened over time into memory. Words were simple, direct, easily read from car windows or from a few steps away. Prices were small enough to fit spare change. Each choice carried anticipation. Families learned routines quickly. The same burger, the same fries, the same shake, repeating patterns that became reassuring rituals. Cash registers chimed with every order, a sound as familiar as a family song. The smell of grilled patties was immediate, thick, warm, settling into hair and clothing. Workers moved with quiet precision, each motion practiced and steady, passing trays across counters with small nods, offering ketchup, straws, napkins without fuss. Children memorized these patterns too, the sound of the bell signaling a ready order, the way straws rattled inside their paper sleeves, the crinkle of wrapping paper as burgers were unwrapped. Outdoor seating meant observing the parking lot world, families entering, teenagers lingering, the occasional car horn. Each fry, each bite of a burger, carried weight beyond taste. It was familiarity, repetition, and comfort sewn together in wax paper and cardboard trays. Conversations overlapped with sizzling fryers, laughter weaving between tables. The exact shape of a table, the smell of cleaning solution mixed with cooking oil, even the slight warmth of a booth under fluorescent light, all became markers for later recollection. Memory solidified in these textures, forming a quiet archive of ordinary afternoons in a suburban or small-town America. Breakfast hours introduced their own cadence. Coffee steamed in cups with thin paper sleeves, sausage and egg sandwiches wrapped in waxed sheets, hash browns sizzling in pans nearby. The pace was slower, fewer children running, more adults in jackets and scarves, holding newspapers or small talk. Orders were repeated daily, familiar routines grounding early mornings. The smell of bread toasted, butter melting, and oil from breakfast sandwiches created a gentle rhythm. People sat alone or in pairs, occasionally exchanging a nod or brief word. The dining room's layout mattered more than anyone realized. Stools at counters allowed quiet observation, booths offered privacy, windows framed the outside world in square panes. Cashiers moved with quiet repetition, lifting trays, counting coins, managing orders with minimal interruption. Some children came later, faces pressed against glass, longing for something outside the structured breakfast routine. Fast food here wasn't a rush. It was a pause, a small ritual before the day's demands. Every wrapper, cup, and napkin became a tool of memory, creating textures and sensations that lingered long after leaving. Even the clatter of a dropped tray or the hiss of a coffee machine held meaning, remembered decades later as part of a morning ritual once so ordinary. These sensory cues formed a slow tapestry of recognition, a quiet imprint of daily life preserved in taste, smell, and sight. The drive-through experience had its own rhythm. Cars idled, engines low and steady, tires brushing asphalt in repeating patterns. Speakers buzzed, crackled, carried voices calling numbers and names across short distances. Orders were repeated aloud, confirmed, passed to waiting hands through small windows. The tactile experience was central. Trays felt cold in winter, warm in summer, condensation on paper cups forming tiny rivulets. Children sat on booster seats, knees bent, faces close to glass, hands reaching for fries while adults navigated change and paper slips. The sound of the fryers accompanied every step, metal scoops, sizzling oil, occasional pops. Burgers wrapped in paper, fries crinkled on wax sheets, soft drinks fizzing in small paper cups. A small ritual unfolded with every transaction, counting coins, handing change, opening ketchup packets, tearing napkins. Families developed subtle routines, one parent holding drinks, another passing bags to the back seat, children nibbling before the car even moved. The outside world blurred in the periphery, other vehicles, passing pedestrians, neon signs flickering. The drive-through was both transactional and intimate, a temporary theater of shared familiarity. Memory preserved it all: the sounds, smells, tactile moments, and fleeting glances. Even decades later, recalling these experiences invokes a quiet recognition of a world in which fast food was less convenience, more a stage for family rhythm and ordinary celebration. Packaging mattered almost as much as food itself. Wrappers crinkled easily, soaking with warmth from burgers, folds catching small droplets of grease. Fry containers were thin cardboard, stiff enough to hold but delicate enough to bend with weight. Soft drink cups rattled when placed on trays, lids sealing carbonation in a small dome of plastic. Condiment packets tore open unevenly, spilling ketchup in unpredictable patterns that became part of the experience. Children learned the exact feel of paper sleeves around their milkshakes, the weight of fries in wax paper sleeves, the smell of hot burgers against fingers. Booths, counters, and stools amplified these tactile cues, the hard edges of formica, the squeak of vinyl, the occasional sticky residue from previous meals. Even background music contributed subtly. Jingles, chimes, and low-frequency hums of kitchen appliances combined into a soundscape that became indistinguishable from memory itself. Collecting these impressions created a sense of quiet security. Everything was ordered, measured, predictable, and yet alive with small variations that made each visit memorable. The layering of smell, sound, and texture created a holistic imprint, ensuring the memory lingered in a way that modern accounts often overlook. These physical details anchored recollection, making it vivid, detailed, and emotionally resonant for decades later. Workers were ever-present yet unobtrusive. Their movements precise, almost choreographed, and hands steady with repetition. Fryers hummed, grills hissed, and the occasional clang of metal punctuated the rhythm. Cashiers folded wrappers with practiced efficiency, counted change with quiet concentration, and passed orders across counters without hesitation. Children watched, imitating, fascinated by the small mechanical dance of a busy kitchen. Parents observed too, often without comment, knowing each routine was familiar, expected. Even minor mistakes, an upside-down fry container, a spilled drink, were absorbed quietly into the rhythm, quickly corrected without fanfare. The layout of the kitchen mattered. Heat from grills drifted to service windows, the smell of cooked meat moved through dining areas, and background chatter blended with sizzles. Every sensory detail reinforced the shared experience, the tactile feedback of trays, the warmth of condiments, the sound of coin hitting counter. These were subtle signals of continuity, markers of ordinary lives punctuated by small indulgences. Fast food in this era was not an industrial or commercial spectacle. It was a space of routine, repetition, and quiet recognition. Memory clings to these minor gestures, the choreography of ordinary human interaction, and the texture of service performed with care and precision. Decades later, recalling these details evokes both nostalgia and a sense of intimate familiarity with a world largely gone. Condiments carried their own rituals. Ketchup packets were torn with small precision, sometimes splattering slightly, leaving fingers bright red. Mustard and mayonnaise followed predictable paths, often applied directly to buns by children or adults, who measured quantity by experience rather than instruction. Fry containers and burger wrappers became makeshift trays for small spills, smears, and drips. Napkins were torn, folded, and passed around, small interventions against mess, yet creating tactile memory. Drinks rattled with carbonation, lids sealing tiny universes of fizz, straws inserted with careful alignment. The smell of fried potatoes mingled with meat, oil, and warm bread, settling on hair and clothes, forming a lingering impression. Even small details, crumpled paper, the weight of a soda cup, the warmth of a burger in hand, become markers for memory. Families moved in quiet choreography, passing packets, sharing bites, wiping hands. Children's fingers became sticky, adults' clothing faintly scented with oil, all unremarkable at the time, but now resonant with recognition. These physical cues shaped the experience far more than flavor alone. The ritual of handling food, wrappers, and trays anchored the moment in memory, creating a layered and detailed archive of ordinary life. Fast food in the 1980s was a multi-sensory landscape where texture, smell, and touch mattered as much as taste, and the details lingered decades later, vivid, unaltered, quietly familiar. Weeknight visits carried a different tone. Less bustling, quieter, the hum of fluorescent lighting more noticeable. Families sometimes slipped in after work or school, trays rattling under small hands, parents balancing orders with practiced ease. The pace was deliberate, measured, not rushed. Conversations were subdued, often punctuated by the sound of chairs moving on vinyl floors or the clink of cutlery against trays. The smell of grilled patties, soft buns, and hot fries permeated the space. Children's small complaints, laughter, or shared observations blended into the rhythm, unnoticed but recorded in memory. Booths provided privacy, counter stools offered engagement with the workers' choreography. The layout and lighting shaped perception, soft reflections on formica, shadows stretching from windows, neon glows outside. Meals were unhurried, yet every element, wrappers, cups, napkins, trays, retained texture, smell, and sound. Parents and children alike moved in quiet synchronicity, a shared understanding of what to expect. These moments, although less celebratory than weekends, formed subtle patterns remembered years later. Each visit was an ordinary, yet distinctly patterned experience, a quiet testament to routines that shaped childhood and family life. Special occasions introduced small flourishes, birthday cakes, limited-time menu items, or seasonal decorations. Bright paper hats perched unevenly on heads, small candles flickered on miniature cakes, and the hum of fryers continued uninterrupted in the background. Children's voices rose with excitement, adults exchanged quiet smiles, and the air was tinged with the scent of frosting, fries, and burgers. The sequence of events was often rehearsed. Distribute hats, light candles, pass forks, unwrap presents, eat dessert. Each motion, however ordinary at the time, became embedded in memory. The rustle of paper, the taste of cake frosting mixed with salt from fries, the weight of a soda cup in hand. Decorations were modest, balloons, simple banners, but contributed to the sensory landscape. The combination of sound, smell, and texture created a quiet immersion. Fast food became a stage for personal ritual, reinforcing small joys and shared experience. Even minor mishaps, a spilled drink, a dropped fry, were absorbed seamlessly, woven into the day's memory. These visits encapsulated repetition, expectation, and subtle delight. Memory preserves not only the food but the rhythm of anticipation, the tactile and olfactory cues, and the quiet joy of being together in a space designed for shared experience. Decades later, recalling these moments evokes both specificity and warmth, a quiet confirmation of lived experience in the era. The 1980s fast food experience lives on in memory more than in menus. It survives in the warmth of a tray, the crinkle of paper, the scent of fries drifting through the air, and the quiet rhythm of shared moments. Families remember the small rituals: passing ketchup, balancing drinks, sitting under fluorescent lights, children leaning against windows. Each sensory detail, each ordinary repetition, has settled into decades of recollection. Fast food was never just about eating. It was a stage for connection, for routine, for memory. Today, remembering it is a quiet way of touching the past, preserved exactly as it was.